Carl Jung, one of the most respected psychologists of the 20th century, believed that life doesn't truly begin when we're young. In fact, he said, life really begins at 40. Before then, you're just doing research. What he means by this is that the first part of life is mainly preparation. In our 20s and 30s, we're learning how the world works. We try to build a stable life. We work, we build relationships, we try to be responsible, to succeed, and to fit in. We form an identity based on what we think we should be. During this phase, we're busy figuring things out and trying to prove ourselves. This is normal. Indeed, Jung believed that this part of life is necessary. But when we get close to 40, something starts to change. And this is where many people misunderstand what's happening. Our culture often makes turning 40 sound like the beginning of decline, like our youth is over and everything after that is just a race to the grave. We've all heard the phrase midlife crisis, as if anyone who questions or changes their life at this stage is falling apart. But Jung said the opposite. He believed that the feelings that show up around 40, the restlessness, the questioning, the sense that something is missing, are not signs of failure, but signs of growth. It's not that life is ending, it's that the first version of your life has done its job. You've built a life on the outside, and now you're ready to understand your life on the inside. So, when Jung said life begins at 40, he meant that this is the age when experience finally allows you to see yourself more clearly. It's that turning point where life shifts from trying to prove who you are to simply living as who you are. So in this video, we're going to explore why life really begins at 40. Number 1. We spend early life building a persona. Jung says, wholly unprepared, we embark upon the second half of life, but we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. Jung once told the story of a man who came to see him in his mid-40s, a respected lawyer with a fine home and a family that loved him. By all outward measures, he was successful, yet he sat across from Jung feeling hollow, confused, and strangely lost. "I've done everything I was supposed to," he said, "and still I feel nothing." Jung listened quietly, then said, "You've built a beautiful house for your outer self, but now your soul is knocking from the cellar, asking to be let in." This simple observation captures the essence of what Jung called the first half of life, the long phase of building the persona and strengthening the ego. In the first half, our energy is turned outward. We learn to function in the world, to make our way, to belong. We define ourselves through roles and achievements. The student, the professional, the partner, the parent. We create a mask, the persona, that allows us to move confidently through society. This isn't false. It's necessary. But it's not the whole truth of who we are. Jung described life as unfolding in 4 main stages, each with a different psychological purpose. The athlete stage, roughly ages 0 to 20, a time when identity is tied to physical appearance, energy, and youth. The warrior stage, roughly ages 20 to 40, a stage of ambition and effort. We work to build careers, families, and reputations. The statement stage, roughly ages 40 to 60, the time when external achievements matter less and we begin to ask deeper questions like, what is meaningful? What do I truly believe in? And finally, the spirit or wise one stage, roughly ages 60 and above. This is a period of reflection, wisdom, and greater spiritual understanding. The lawyer in Jung's story was right at the transition point between the warrior and the statement stages. This often happens around midlife. The job title, the social identity, and the image we show to others stop feeling fulfilling. The ego, which used to motivate us, no longer feels like enough. The goals that once mattered seem less important, and the deeper self starts to ask for attention. In simple terms, the person realizes that their achievements aren't giving them the same sense of meaning they once did, and they begin to wonder what actually matters to them personally. Jung saw this moment not as a breakdown, but as a call to transformation. The first half of life is about building the house, the ego, the mask, the outer identity. But it can't shelter the soul forever. And so at midlife, the unconscious begins to press upward, demanding recognition. And for Jung, this is a sacred turning point. The first half of life was about becoming somebody. The second half is about becoming yourself. The man who sat in Jung's office eventually understood that his depression wasn't an illness, but a message, an invitation to meet the parts of himself he'd left behind. And that, Jung believed, is where life truly begins. Number 2. Midlife opens the door to the inner self. In the words of Jung, thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step with the false assumption that our truths and ideals will serve us still. Not long after speaking with his patient, Jung wrote in The Stages of Life that many people in their 40s and 50s weren't suffering from neuroses, but from a loss of meaning. He noticed a pattern around midlife. The psyche begins to shift its center of gravity. For decades, our energy is directed outwards towards success, growth, and recognition. But one day, it turns inward. What once worked stops working. The goal that once thrilled us now feels empty. It's as if life no longer supports the path we've been walking. Jung described this turning point as a summons from the unconscious, a natural transition into the second half of life. To the ego, this feels like a collapse, a midlife crisis, if you will, but to the soul, it's an awakening. The patient, who once found meaning in his legal victories, now felt them hollow. A woman who devoted herself to being the perfect mother or wife began to ask, who am I apart from these roles? A man who lived only for his work began to feel a fatigue that no vacation could cure. And Jung saw these not as failures, but as the psyche's call for renewal. Jung compared our lives to the path of the sun. In the first half of life, we're like the sun in the morning, rising, gaining strength, and pushing upward. We work hard, set goals, and try to build a successful life. But eventually, we reach a point where that upward climb can't continue forever. Just like the sun stops rising at noon, we also reach a point where more no longer satisfies us. The second half of life isn't about climbing higher, it's about turning inward and understanding ourselves more deeply. It involves facing parts of ourselves we may have ignored, our fears, our unmet needs, our hidden desires. This can feel uncomfortable or confusing, which is why midlife often feels like a crisis. But this inward turn is what leads to real wisdom and a deeper sense of meaning. Jung wrote of one woman who embodied this. She was in her 40s, admired by many, yet tormented by a restlessness she could not explain. I have everything I ever wanted, she said, and yet I feel as though I'm dying inside. Jung told her, it's not death that's approaching, it's life, the life you've not yet lived. This is the essence of the midlife crisis, the soul demanding to be heard after decades of silence. It asks, what have you ignored? What have you sacrificed for success? And what parts of you are still unlived? The symptoms, anxiety, emptiness, depression, irritability, are all signals that the psyche is ready to evolve. The outer world may seem to be falling apart, but inwardly, something new is beginning. The ego built during the first half of life has reached its limits. Now life asks us to turn inward, to listen to the unconscious and reclaim parts of ourselves we set aside to fit who we thought we should be. This is why Jung said that life truly begins at 40, not because age brings wisdom automatically, but because for the first time we're invited to meet the whole of who we are. Number 3. We finally understand ourselves. Carl Jung once wrote, "In the second half of life, the question is no longer, what must I do to succeed, but what does life ask of me now?" Midlife is the stage where many people notice a quiet pull towards reflection. They may begin journaling, seeking therapy, returning to old interests, or becoming curious about questions they once avoided. There's less interest in competition, comparison, and getting ahead, and more interest in authenticity and emotional honesty. It's not about giving up on life, it's about wanting that life to feel real. Jung saw this shift as natural. The first half of life builds the structure, the career, the identity, the family roles, and social presence. The second half asks what lives inside that structure. What's the point of the life we've built? What is the self behind the performance? This stage often brings forward things that were pushed aside earlier. Feelings we didn't allow ourselves to feel, parts of our personality we suppressed, interests we said we didn't have time for, or values we adopted simply because others expected them of us. All of these exiled pieces form what Jung called the shadow. Not evil, but unlived. It's in the anger that wasn't acceptable, the creativity that wasn't practical, the vulnerability that seemed dangerous, and the desires that didn't fit the identity we were building. This process of facing what we've hidden and bringing it back into our lives is called individuation. It's the slow, steady process of becoming whole. It doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming real. This doesn't happen in dramatic breakthroughs, but slowly through honest self-observation. Noticing what we feel but usually avoid, admitting desires we're embarrassed to have, recognizing strengths we've downplayed, or accepting flaws without shame. Some people begin reconnecting with passions they abandoned in youth. Others begin setting boundaries they never allowed themselves to set. Some start asking deeper questions about purpose, morality, spirituality, or legacy. At this stage, life is no longer measured by achievement, but by alignment. The question isn't, what should I be doing, but what matters to me now, honestly. Jung believed that this was the real foundation of maturity, not age or experience, but the willingness to listen inwardly, to meet the parts of ourselves we once ignored, and to live from a place that feels true instead of expected. And so this is the beginning of the second half of life, the awakening of self-understanding and the call towards inner truth. Number 4. Dreams become the new language. According to Jung, the dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Jung believed that the psyche has its own language, older than logic and untouched by social conditioning. When the outer identity begins to soften, this language rises to the surface. The soul doesn't argue, persuade, or demand. It whispers, and it whispers through dreams, intuition, creative urges, mood changes, and the sudden return of forgotten memories. And it's in midlife that many people begin to notice their dreams becoming more vivid, more emotional, and more meaningful. A person may have the same dream again and again, walking down a hallway that leads nowhere, searching for a room that can't be found, losing something precious, or encountering a stranger who feels strangely familiar. These dreams are not random. They're the psyche calling attention to the parts of the self that were ignored or sacrificed in the march through life. During the first half of life, that door remains closed because survival and achievement take priority. But in the second half, where the soul begins to speak, the door opens, sometimes gently, sometimes suddenly. Art, music, poetry, nature, spiritual imagery, these also become powerful. A particular song begins to stir emotion for reasons you cannot explain. You feel like you recognize a painting you've never seen before. Symbols like a bird, a mountain, or a childhood place begin to appear in your thoughts or dreams. Jung didn't see these as coincidences, however. He saw them as guidance. The unconscious doesn't tell you what to do, it shows you what you feel. One of Jung's patients was a man who'd always seen himself as logical and in control. He then started having the same dream again and again. He was standing at the edge of a wide, silent sea. Nothing moved, and the water stretched out forever. He told Jung it was probably nothing, but the dream kept coming back. Each time it left him with a strange feeling. Calm, but also unsettled. Jung listened patiently and thoughtfully responded. The dream, he said, wasn't random. It was showing the part of the man's life he'd ignored. The man had spent years living from his head, solving problems, staying steady, never letting emotion get too close. But the sea was a reminder that his emotional world was still there, waiting. And over time, as he talked through the dream, he began to understand what it meant. The sea wasn't trying to scare him. It was asking him to go deeper, to stop running from his own feelings and start listening to them. And eventually, his dream changed. He wasn't standing on the shore anymore. He was walking into the water. It was cold, but it was peaceful. For Jung, that was the turning point. The man had begun to reconnect with the parts of himself he'd left behind, his emotions, his instincts, his imagination. That was the real meaning of the dream. It wasn't about the sea at all. It was about learning to live from the whole self, not just the part that feels safe. This is how the soul communicates, not through argument, but through imagery that the heart recognizes before the mind can even process, let alone understand. It's the psyche saying there's more of you just waiting to be lived. So when Jung says dreams, symbols, and imagination become important in the second half of life, he means that the inner world finally steps forward as a guide. Number 5. Opposites seek reunion. To quote Carl Jung, the animus corresponds to the paternal logos, just as the anima corresponds to the maternal eros. Jung said that the middle of life is where we're asked to do one of the most difficult tasks a human can undertake, to become whole by integrating our inner opposites. He believed that every person carries within them both light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, logic and intuition, masculine and feminine energies, regardless of gender. In the first half of life, we tend to choose one side and reject the other. We identify with what's socially rewarded and suppress what feels inconvenient or uncomfortable. For example, a man may build his identity around being strong, rational, and unemotional, the culturally reinforced masculine. Meanwhile, his kindness, creativity, intuition, and longing for connection, his quote-unquote inner feminine, which Jung called the anima, is pushed into the background, sometimes denied altogether. Likewise, a woman may be encouraged to be nurturing, sympathetic, and relational, the socially approved feminine. Her assertiveness, ambition, independence, and inner fire, her inner masculine or animus, may be ignored or even feared. But the psyche doesn't forget what's been pushed aside. they stay in the shadow, below our awareness, and continue to influence us in indirect ways. This can show up as sudden mood changes, strong reactions to people, unexplained attraction or resentment, creative urges we can't explain, or even just a general sense of emptiness. Many people feel this most strongly in midlife. A man who spent his life being practical and rational may start to feel cut off from his emotions or sense of purpose. A woman who's always cared for others may realize she's lost touch with her independence and her inner strength. Jung called this a psychological turning point because the parts of us that were neglected begin to ask for attention. Integrating the anima or animus starts with noticing what we've rejected in ourselves. This isn't about changing who we are, but becoming more balanced. For example, a man who realizes he's avoided vulnerability might begin to explore his feelings more honestly by journaling, talking with a trusted friend, or through therapy. He might allow himself to enjoy art, music, or time in nature, where sensitivity and intuition can emerge. These are small ways to reconnect with his inner feminine or anima. A woman who's always focused on harmony in relationships might start practicing saying no, setting clear boundaries, or pursuing a personal goal she's put aside. By doing this, she connects with her inner masculine or animus, the part that values independence, confidence, and direction. But it's important to know that this process takes time and patience. It's not about rejecting the person we've been, but about adding back what's been missing. And as we do this, life begins to feel more whole. Number 6. Spiritual questions emerge naturally. In our final quote from Jung for this video, he says, "Thoroughly unprepared, we take this step into the afternoon of life." When people reach midlife, many people start to feel a quiet pull towards something deeper. This isn't about religion or belief, it's about meaning. Jung noticed that after years of building a life on the outside, people begin to wonder what it's all for. They start to look for a sense of purpose that feels more genuine, something that connects to who they are inside, not just what they do. Some notice small changes first. They pay more attention to coincidence, intuition, or a feeling that certain moments matter more than they can explain. Jung called these experiences signals from the unconscious. He believed that they were ways the deeper self tries to guide us towards balance and wholeness. For others, this shift shows up in how they want to spend their time. They might care less about climbing higher and more about helping others, creating something meaningful, or simply just being present with the people they love. Life becomes less about achievement and more about authenticity. At this point, life doesn't feel like a race anymore. It feels more like a conversation, a discussion between who we've been and who we're becoming. And that, Jung believed, is where real peace begins. And so, for those in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, this is not decline. This is rebirth. It's the moment your soul says, "You've spent so long becoming who you needed to be, now it's time to become who you truly are." So maybe the question to ask isn't, what's next, but rather, what part of you is waiting to return? If you like what we do on this page, consider becoming a channel member. It costs less than a cup of coffee and gives you access to philosophy-themed emojis, badges, members-only polls, and members-only videos. To support us, click on the link in the description, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist. And for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.